But first, it's time for Father Nathan Cromly. So thrilled to have him back as a normal part, a weekly part of Morning Offering. Time for Father Nathan Cromly and Tread Boldly.
This is Tread Boldly, Leadership Lessons from the Saints, with Father Nathan Cromly.
Hey there, thanks for having me back again. I'd like to talk with you this morning about St. Paul and some of the lessons that he gives us when it comes to leading in the name of Christ. We need these lessons because today we're not short on solutions. We're short on people who can make those solutions real in our society and in their families. When you think about it, Christianity is an answer. It's God's answer to sin, God's answer to our questions. Well, then why isn't that answer being better known? Because one thing is to give an answer, and another thing is to make that answer real in the context of where we live today. That's why we need Christians to step into leadership, to say, it's going to start with me. I need to be the one that brings the faith wherever I've been sent, into my family, into my marriage, into my workplace. All right, when we do that, we resemble St. Paul. And this is what I want to talk about today. His life was really exceptional. We all know the amazing things that he did, all of the feats that he attempted. And we can think that his life was just a straight line from his conversion straight to his martyrdom. But in fact, St. Paul's life was not a straight line. Of course, he always kept the faith, and of course, he was always growing more deeply in union with Christ. But when you look at his footsteps, where he went, and the things that he had to go through, the route that he took is actually quite surprising. Here's an example. In Acts chapter 9, after his conversion, we read that St. Paul preached in Damascus. We also know from his letter to the Galatians that after his conversion, he spent a few years in the deserts of Arabia, praying and being alone with God. At one point, however, he comes back to Jerusalem. And in Acts chapter 9, verse 26, it tells us about Paul's return to Jerusalem and how there he found a cold welcome from the Christians. In fact, they were afraid to receive him. Thanks to St. Barnabas, St. Paul is accepted by the other apostles, endorsed by them, and immediately begins preaching to the same Greek-speaking Jews that had killed St. Stephen. This alarmed the apostles, and so they literally took St. Paul to Caesarea and sent him off on a boat back to his hometown of Tarsus. Now think about that. This is St. Paul, after his conversion, literally being told not to preach. They sent him back to where he had come from, his hometown. He had no apparent mission, no apparent reason for being there, and no time frame for how long to stay. It was like St. Paul had been put in exile. It's not until Acts 11, verse 19, that we hear about St. Paul again, when St. Barnabas comes to find him and then bring him to the church in Antioch, from which he'll then begin to preach all over the world. It's this time of waiting in Tarsus that really draws my attention. I want you to imagine with me what that looked like. Imagine the great lion of God, St. Paul, sitting at home. What was he doing every day in Tarsus? How did he spend his time? How did he maintain the sense that his time was worthwhile or that his life had a purpose? Regardless of all the incredible things that God would do with him in his life, God made him wait as well. There was this period of time, and we don't know exactly how long it was. Was it a year and a half, 6 months? Where St. Paul was sent without a mission, without a purpose, literally to wait until St. Barnabas found him, and the two of them would go off to preach the gospel throughout the world. What's the purpose of a time like this? Well, we see other times where God makes people wait in the Bible. Moses and Aaron had to lead the people of God for 40 years through the desert before they reached Canaan. Jeremiah had to dwell in a mud pit for a long time before God pulled him out. Even our Lord appeared to wait 30 years before his hour had come, and he decided to begin to preach openly and accomplish the Father's mission. It's no small wonder then that God would ask St. Paul to wait in Tarsus. The real question is not whether or not we have to wait sometimes before accomplishing God's work. The real question is, what is God doing while we're waiting? The first thing to keep in mind is that God is never still. We might be waiting, but God is acting. He's working in our hearts. He's working in our souls to deepen who we are. God is working on you. He's working on all of us to prepare us for the great things that we will do. by allowing us to focus on Him while we wait. If we allow ourselves to sit with St. Paul in Tarsus, we see that being asked to wait is not a rejection. It's an invitation to place our lives and our hearts completely in Him, to trust in God and then tread boldly in our world.